How many people here attended high school? Please raise your hand if you attended high school. Why you got to put me on the spot? You didn't attend high school, brother? You did. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so there are these guys in the class who knew how to get easy A's. And they maybe got A's, and they might have been a little boring at the same time intellectually. Maybe a guy like that, he did nothing but drink and play sports aside from studying. But there was maybe another guy in physics class, for example, who knew how to get easy A's, and he was like an expert in black holes at the same time. Or he was maybe so good in the topic of building bridges that he was that guy who could build a bridge that would hold 452 pounds. Or maybe there's that girl in Spanish class who would also get A's, and on the weekends she'd translate Cervantes. Even though she was 16, she could translate Spanish poetry into English in her free time. So for people like that, getting A's on the report card isn't enough. There's a question of what you're doing with those gifts and how do you access that passion. There was maybe that guy in history class who brought up Stalin or the USSR, or who brought up Tito from Yugoslavia from time to time, or who loved the French Revolution. And he really loved the subject matter. And the only thing the football coach teaching the class could say in response might be something like, Tito, you mean Tito from the Jackson 5? And the history teacher had the syllabus and makes the tests and had the advanced degrees, but you're pretty sure that guy in the back row knew even more than him about the material that he had a passion for. And maybe the guy in the back row was even getting a D in class. This talk is about bankers versus cypherpunks. Who in this room knows what a banker is? Thank you. Who in this room knows what a cypherpunk is? Thank you. These people I described, these three people, you want them involved in crypto, the people with passion for the subject matter. The girl who translates Cervantes on the weekends, the guy who builds the bridge that can hold 452 pounds, the guy in the back row who knows history better than the teacher. Grades are secondary to them. Their passion for the subject matter is primary. These are the freakers with the Captain Crunch whistles. These are the hackers with their insistence on jumping out of bed, obsessed with solving the latest problems they thought up. These are the Austrian school economists with their monetary theory and philosophy on human action. They're a whole lot more fun to talk to than the guys who get straight A's and have no passion. Instead, the freakers, hackers, and Austrians, crypto is getting InfoSec, consultants, bankers. They know how to get straight A's. They know how to navigate the boardrooms. They know how to make money. But where's their passion? Not in crypto, not in the tech, not in the potential to free the world from oppressive slave money that everyone gets so excited about. The bear markets are good for crypto. They bring the geeks back. They chase off the paycheck seekers. They bring the freakers back. They chase off the ones who came to the industry with stock options and payouts in mind. And don't get me wrong, money's great. Resources are great. Profit is great. Profit is actually a way that you demonstrate your usefulness to the world, perhaps the best way. And a very useful check-in with reality. Profit helps you to avoid years of intellectual masturbation and to push your ideas out in the world with lots of testing and feedback and in plentiful iteration. But when that is all you have to offer, an ability to make profit and a lack of passion, you end up with an iPhone made by boring Tim, whatever his name is, at Apple, instead of the groundbreaking push toward perfection led by Steve Jobs. You end up with garbage being produced by Apple today. You don't want that in crypto, which is why I'm happy to cheer for less garbage in crypto by saying, long live the bear markets. Ideally, you get both. Ideally, you get profit and passion. That's a beauteous thing, and that's the ideal. But there are plenty of passionless people who see crypto as a paycheck, who will destroy the fundamental concepts behind crypto if they're allowed to. If they're allowed to by you, if they're allowed to by me, if they're allowed to by the people who know better. Those are the people I'm speaking about today. This is the battle for the soul of a technology. Who's heard of a hacker conference called DEF CON? Only like 5 people? Okay, there's this really cool hacker conference that used to happen in Las Vegas every year. Maybe it will return again. In 2019, organizers of DEF CON issued a reminder highlighting how they might define the division between hacker and the newspeak sounding term InfoSec. DEF CON is a hacker con, not an InfoSec conference. Hackers are more focused on the joy of discovery, irreverence, novel, if impractical approaches. InfoSec is more focused on enterprise frameworks and protecting the interest of shareholders. There's great value in both types of content, but our con is a hacker con by design. Where is the crypto guy who will make his Burning Man as dusty as possible instead of hiding in an RV park with a maid and a chef? Where's the coder poet who will never lie and say, code is poetry, but who will instead say, poetry is poetry and code is code. Both are beautiful when done well, and I'm one of the few who can distill the beauty of each and combine them. Where's the one who will say that and who will combine Python and Rilke, or Go and Coleridge into an integrated life and philosophy? I want to point to examples of coder poets. These are geeks who get the tech of their respective area of expertise and who get the passion, the beautiful passion as well. There are many, but for my purposes today, cypherpunks and the Austrian school economists are who I want to most carefully look at. I'm going to read to you something written in 1993 that illustrates some cypherpunk goals. This is called the Cypherpunks Manifesto. Privacy is necessary for an open society in the electronic age. Privacy is not secrecy. A private matter is something one doesn't want the whole world to know, but a secret matter is something one doesn't want anyone to know. Privacy is the power to selectively reveal oneself to the world. If 2 parties have some sort of dealings, then each has a memory of their interaction. Each party can speak about their own memory of this. How could anyone prevent it? One could pass laws against it, but the freedom of speech, even more than privacy, is fundamental to an open society. We seek not to restrict any speech at all. If many parties speak together in the same forum, each can speak to all the others and aggregate together knowledge about individuals and other parties. The power of electronic communication has enabled such group speech, and it will not go away merely because we might want it to. Since we desire privacy, we must ensure that each party to a transaction have knowledge only of that which is directly necessary for that transaction. Since any information can be spoken of, we must ensure that we reveal as little as possible. In most cases, personal identity is not salient. When I purchase a magazine at a store and hand cash to the clerk, there's no need to know who I am. When I ask my electronic mail provider to send and receive messages, my provider need not know to whom I'm speaking, or to what I'm saying, or what others are saying about me. My provider only need know how to get the message there and how much I owe them in fees. When my identity is revealed by the underlying mechanism of the transaction, I have no privacy. I cannot here selectively reveal myself. I must always reveal myself. Therefore, privacy in an open society requires anonymous transaction systems. Until now, cash has been the primary such system. An anonymous transaction system is not a secret transaction system. An anonymous system empowers individuals to reveal their identity when desired, and only when desired. This is the essence of privacy. Privacy in an open society also requires cryptography. If I say something, I want it heard only by those for whom I intend it. If the content of my speech is available to the world, I then have no privacy. To encrypt is to indicate the desire for privacy, and to encrypt with weak cryptography is to indicate not too much desire for privacy. Furthermore, to reveal one's identity with assurance, when the default is anonymity requires the cryptographic signature. We cannot expect governments, corporations, or other large, faceless organizations to grant us privacy out of their beneficence. It is to their advantage to speak of us, and we should expect that they will speak. To try to prevent their speech is to fight against the realities of information. Information does not want to be free. Information, forgive me, does not just want to be free, it longs to be free. Information expands to fill the available storage space. Information is rumor's younger, stronger cousin. Information is fleeter of foot, has more eyes, knows more, and understands less than rumor. We must defend our own privacy if we expect to have any. We must come together and create systems which allow anonymous transactions to take place. People have been defending their own privacy for centuries with whispers, darkness, envelopes, closed doors, and secret handshakes. And couriers, the technologies of the past did not allow for strong privacy, but electronic technologies do. We, the cypherpunks, are dedicated to building anonymous systems. We are defending our privacy with cryptography, with anonymous mail forwarding systems, with digital signatures, and with electronic money. Cypherpunks write code. We know that someone has to write software to defend privacy. And since we can't get privacy unless we all do, we're going to write it. We're going to write that code. We publish our code so that our fellow cypherpunks may practice and play with it. Our code is free to all to use worldwide. We don't much care if you don't approve of the software we write. We know that software can't be destroyed and that a widely dispersed system can't be shut down. Cypherpunks deplore regulations on cryptography, for encryption is fundamentally a private act. The act of encryption, in fact, removes information from the public realm. Even laws against cryptography reach only so far as a nation's borders and the arm of its violence. Cryptography will ineluctably spread over the whole globe, and with it the anonymous transaction systems that make it possible. For privacy to be widespread, it must be a part of a social contract. People must come together and deploy these systems for the common good. Privacy only extends so far as the cooperation of one's fellows in society. We, the cypherpunks, seek your questions and your concerns and hope we may engage you so that we do not deceive ourselves. We will not, however, be moved out of our course because some may disagree with our goals. The cypherpunks are actively engaged in making the networks safer for privacy. Let us proceed together apace. Onward, Eric Hughes, 9th of March, 1993. That's the Cypherpunk Manifesto. Now the cypherpunks have won. The US Senate talks about taking down Signal. Certainly a centralized server can be taken down. Software can't be forgotten. Bitcoin can be banned, and that ban may have no impact unless the technology is centralized. Napster is a great example of why centralized servers are a problem when government becomes your enemy. BitTorrent is a great example of why it doesn't matter what government thinks of you. Encryption is here to stay. Electronic money is here to stay. Privacy is here to stay. At least I think that's the case. For centuries, borders have been pushed east and west as tribes have fought battles. The victor always declaring a permanent victory, a war to end all wars, only to have a border squabbled over in the next generation as their children seek to right seething wrongs of the past. Those grandpas in Washington want a battle. They're 20-year-old grandpas, and they are 80-year-old grandpas also. They don't get it. They don't get that they can't win the battle. But we maybe don't get that we could lose the battle, especially if we are not vigilant in protecting those boundaries that have been hard earned. On this topic, on January 28th, 1852, Wendell Phillips, in a speech, spoke the following rousing words: "Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. Power is ever stealing from the many to the few. The manna of popular liberty must be gathered each day, or it is rotten. The living sap of today outgrows the dead rind of yesterday. The hard entrusted with power, the harder entrusted with power becomes, either from human depravity or esprit de corps, the necessary enemy of the people. Only by continued oversight can the Democrat in office be prevented from hardening into a despot. Only by unintermitted agitation can a people be sufficiently awake to principle not to let liberty be smothered in material prosperity. Again, the cypherpunks have won. But where have the cypherpunks gone? They've won their battle, but I cannot find them. I cannot find them in crypto, and crypto so desperately needs them. Increasingly, crypto is becoming a strange and unfamiliar place to them. They're hackers, they're tinkerers, they're creators. And all crypto companies want, once they are established, is InfoSec. Plenty in crypto want to convey the message that it doesn't need the hackers, tinkerers, and creators anymore. And of course, once there's a little money to be made by running the show, someone with no skill in the subject matter wants to convince the most highly skilled to step aside so that the less skilled can run companies. The less skilled have no other way in the door than to convince the creators that creativity is no longer needed. It is spreadsheets and PowerPoints and 14-person meetings that drone on for 3 hours. That's what crypto really needs, they insist. Perhaps it does. Perhaps crypto needs janitors to tend to the amazing creations that have been built. And so that the creators may move on to new problems to tackle, not having to worry about doing the janitorial work themselves. But we should never be confused by an impressive title on a janitor's business card or a fancy suit that a janitor put on to try to get you to forget that he is nothing but a janitor. The janitor has no place determining the direction of an industry so vital to humanity. With Bitcoin, the door to the cypherpunk dream was cracked open. This is territory that must be defended. There's a second group that is winning. Those are the Austrians. Who's heard of the Austrian School of Economics? Almost more than who have heard of the cypherpunks. The Austrian school economists, descended from Menger, Baum-Bauerwerk, Mises, Hayek, Rothbard, especially Rothbard from my observation, have laid the foundation of crypto. At Bitcoin 2019, I had the opportunity to deliver a talk in San Francisco on why Satoshi Nakamoto was an Austrian, inspired by Ron Paul's 2007 and 2008 campaign. I'd be happy to share that text with anyone who'd like to have a look. The creation of Bitcoin is the perfect event that takes place in the midst of the 2007-2008 financial crisis, when a cypherpunk suddenly comes to understand Austrian school economics, an historic moment where his melding of technology and philosophy could forever change the world. The cypherpunk and Austrian school love child is Bitcoin. And these Austrians have won too. For decades, Austrian school economists have been denouncing flawed and failed monetary policy that comes to affect every member of society in ways so supremely sinister. The argument has been so well laid out by the Austrians that the deaths of millions at the hands of government is rooted even in monetary policy. The boot on the neck oppressing billions more is rooted as well in monetary policy. And everyone around us in society believes in that monetary policy with such obedience. Like an elephant at the circus when young, chained to a hulking metal peg in the ground, struggling for days, unable to free itself from the peg, learning at a young age that the peg can't be moved, growing eventually into a mighty hulk of a creature, chained to a tiny peg in the ground, convinced that the peg has no ability to be moved. It isn't the peg that restrains the elephant. It's the elephant's own mistaken belief in the power of that peg, our monetary system is such a fatally flawed enabler of oppression. And it is that way because so many so fervently believe that's how things must be. But is it your oppressor's fault that you are so oppressible? In 2008, when Satoshi Nakamoto came to realize that things were not as they must be, he opened a door that can no longer be closed. The Austrians have achieved their dream of competing currencies rather than government monopoly currency. There are now, merely a decade later, several thousand competing currencies that circulate on a given day. Each of those currencies are an experiment in how the free market would better structure monetary policy than our government monopoly on monetary policy. No one's going to bring an end to this realization that a hulking elephant will be restrained by a silly idea that he refuses to believe in. And the Austrians, able to proudly declare victory on this long, difficult problem that has plagued humanity, are barely anywhere to be seen around crypto. Where have the Austrians gone? They've won their battle for a free market currency, and now I can hardly find them in crypto, yet crypto desperately needs them. Without them, it's a technology quickly hurtling away from its brilliant philosophical foundation. It is my advice that you not turn to a corporate janitor for insight on philosophy or ethics. The janitor doesn't know, and you do both you and the janitor a disservice when you pretend that the janitor gets crypto and its underlying philosophy. You do the world a disservice when you invite that janitor to direct an industry based on the whims of the janitor, when the industry is instead badly in need of contact with its core philosophy. The cypherpunk, the hacker, the kid in history class, the girl translating Cervantes on the weekends, the freaker, the Austrian, the geek, deserve our attention for no less than their knowledge and their passion. I come in contact with many crypto projects over the course of even a single day, sometimes quite intimately. And to anyone who describes that laundry list I've described, I have a longer laundry list for people who want to engage in the crypto space and change it. I know people who will fund such projects. I know people who will advise such projects. I know people who will inspire you on the days you are down. If you're an Austrian, if you're a hacker, if you're a cypherpunk, if you're just a wannabe with passion, I want you to come talk to me. Because this isn't technology for the bankers. It's not technology for the consultants, unless we make it so. That was my laundry list I just skipped. I'm not going to share it with the bankers. The cypherpunk and the hacker that I'm looking for in the room, imagine if some of these passions can be applied to some of these problems. Who here has heard of the Greek god Hermes? Even more people that who've heard of the Austrian school or the cypherpunks. Perhaps. The author Robert Bly describes this passion, invoking the ancient god Hermes, calling it Hermes energy. I'd like to ask you to carefully follow this wonderful quotation. It's going to take about 90 seconds to read. And I have some questions about this energy. Does this Hermes energy he describes sound familiar to you? If not, have you lost touch with it? Are there others around you who come to mind who have this Hermes energy I'm about to describe? Can you learn from them? Can you grow from them? What can be done to tap into that passion in daily life? What can be done to spend as much of the day as possible in touch with that passion that I have, that maybe you have, but that every one of us was born with inside of us? Because with that passion and with this technology, we will free humanity from an immense shackle. Hermes is the god of the interior nervous system. His presence amounts to heavenly wit. When we are in Hermes' field, messages pass with fantastic speed between the brain and the fingertips, between the heart and the tear ducts, between the genitals and the eyes, between the part of us that suffers and the part of us that laughs. Hermes is Mercury, and we know that Mercury cannot be held in the hand. It rolls everywhere, separates into tiny drops, joins again, falls on the floor, rolls under the table, moves with amazing quickness. It is correctly called quicksilver. This mercurial energy is called, among other things, Odin in Northern Europe, Mercury in Italy, Hermes in Greece. It is the day of the week Wednesday, Odin's Day, Mercredi in France. Sometimes when friends are talking in a closed room, the heat of the conversation begins to increase. Witty things are said, contributions flow from all sides, leaps of imagination appear. The genuinely spiritual follows an instant after the genuinely obscene. Hermes has arrived. At some beautiful moment of the conversation, a silence falls that feels mysterious. Everyone hesitates to break it. In Spain, until the 15th century, that silence was called Hermes silence. The old tradition maintains that true learning does not take place unless Hermes is present. That is depressing, because university English departments and sociology departments and religion departments usually get rid of teachers with Hermes energy first. The whole PhD system was created by Germanic Hermes killers. Hermes is magical, detail-loving, obscene, dance-like, goofy, and Hermes is not on a career track. Hermes slips in true information in that split second between the moment your tongue starts a word and the moment it finishes. You plan to say, "This is my mother," and you say, "This is my wife." I did that. My mother looked up very pleased. You plan to say "farther," and it comes out "father," because Hermes moves faster than our thought. What people called a Freudian slip is really a Hermes precision. Hermes punctures pomposity, sureness, and self-satisfaction. End quote, if allowed to be. Cryptocurrency will be more impactful to human existence than machine learning, more impactful than self-driving vehicles, more impactful than robotics, more impactful than even the internet. Exchanges like the ones I've worked for, or Coinbase, or Bitstamp, or Binance, or BitMEX, these exchanges have done important pioneering work. They weren't to the industry first, but under the watch of people with a true love for the technology, a true love to free humanity. And make no mistake, this is about freeing humanity. You have crypto, or you have slave money. Companies like that. Companies like that, run by people with a love for crypto, are slowly being run by people who are agnostic to the tech, perhaps even skeptical. Some companies are being purchased, centralization is occurring, fundamentally at odds with the notion of the tech. And in the next generation of crypto, some of these companies will have largely wrapped up the industry in an easy to digest, easy to regulate package for governments and for other enemies of freedom who prefer their subjects using slave money. And it isn't lost to them that distributed ledger technology makes it even easier to track society. Chainalysis, Crystal, and many other companies exist to help ensure that the promise of crypto does not include a sense of financial freedom, a concept central to human existence until the post-World War II period, in which one of America's chief exports became its regulatory environment. as American diplomats, politicians, regulators, and even armies traveled the world bullying political bodies to deny financial freedom to their subjects. Crypto has no KYC policy. It has no AML policy. In its finest iteration, crypto is cash 2.0. How can you trust a Square, a Suit, an InfoSec, a consultant, a banker to understand that? They have what the Slovaks and the Czechs playfully call professional deformations. Their jobs have come to influence their behavior, their thoughts, and their sense of self. So few of them get crypto. And the great thing is, it doesn't matter. None of this matters because the industry is not centralized yet. The technology remains free to be developed, largely unregulated, with no barriers to entry. What comes next won't be that way. In about half an hour, I'm going to speak with a senator and a congressman on the main stage about what regulation should never look like. Goldman, Bank of America, JP Morgan will all come to have a stake, and they will all come to have a say. But it doesn't have to be that way. I call on you to join me to take advantage of this historic moment to free humanity. Thank you.